Welcome to ttff 2020 industry events, and thank you so much for joining us. This year, our full program will be screened online from September 9th, today, the kickoff dates, to September 15th, with our new media exhibition installed at Medulla Art Gallery in Woodbrook, Port of Spain. If you are joining us via Facebook Live, please feel free to post all your questions in the comments section below, and we'll address them during the session. Don't forget that you can check out our full film listing and pay for film bundles, like the Lime Bundle, which has these fabulous gentlemen that we're going to talk to in 2 seconds. You can pay for all of them and buy them online at online.ttfilmfestival.com. We'd like to thank all of our TTFF 20 sponsors and partners. The festival this year is given sponsorship by the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, contributing sponsorship by Republic Bank Limited, with Shell Trinidad and Tobago Limited supporting the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival's online events. I'm Kafi Kareem, the founder of Storyplay TV, a Trinidad company taking Caribbean video entertainment to families worldwide. And I'm here with Tony Oldham, director of A People's Art, The Genesis of Freedom, and Chris Ballengee, director of Sweet Tassa, Music of the Indian Caribbean Diaspora. So we're gonna ask these gentlemen some questions about their fabulous documentaries. And to kick it off, if you don't mind, Chris, I want to know about that opening shot in your documentary. You opened your documentary with a shot of goat skins, animal skins on the ground. Tell us about that. What made you decide to open the documentary with that?
Well, I think there's a discussion that emerges in the film about this idea between the goatskin tassa and the newer style of tassa drum, which came out in the 1990s or so. And if you ask any drummer today, right, any tassa drummer will tell you that goatskin is the best. It's the thing that makes tassa what it is. And so I was trying to find some way to start the film, to kind of draw in the story. And so there's the goatskin tassa, which is the thing that sort of animates tassa. Everybody is enthusiastic about hearing a goatskin tassa. But then there's the materials of the drum itself. And so I start with the raw goatskin on the ground to kind of think about the raw materials that go into the drum. And if you fast forward to the end of the film, all right, then we can see some of the construction of the drum come back again. And so I try to start with that image, and then we come back to that image toward the end, just before the final scene. So it sort of wraps up, and I think kind of encapsulates the story a little bit. So it's a story about tassa, of course, where it came from, where it's going, how it's related to culture, but it's also about the instruments itself. And so I try to wrap the story in that idea of the instrument itself.
Nice. Okay, so Tony, your documentary, A People's Art, The Genesis of Freedom, looks at one of Trinidad's biggest exports, which is Trinidad Carnival, yeah. Right? I'm curious, how did you get introduced to Trinidad Carnival?
Gosh, so about almost 10 years ago, I worked on a carnival TV program, and it just pulls you in straight away. So I kind of did some background reading on carnival, and obviously it's not just Caribbean history, it's global history, and this incredibly rich tapestry of, well, everything from colonialism, slavery, emancipation. And so it just completely pulled me in. And of course, all of the arts, it was just a subject that as a filmmaker, I kind of got more and more drawn to. And so, yeah, I kind of started to work in carnival by default, because a co-producer is very involved in, very involved in carnival. And basically I kind of wanted to do a feature on it, because I just got so pulled into it. But yeah.
Got it. So from that TV show, you just got the documentary idea in your head and how many years was it between that and you making the documentary?
So the documentary was, I think, 2012, 13. And what happened was I started doing, you know, kind of like mass band launches and that type of thing. So I slowly built up kind of some good contacts. And eventually, probably that was 2014 when I decided I wanted to do the feature film. And I approached the London Carnival Committee, telling them what I wanted to do. It's kind of a very small committee, and probably the big idea I had, it didn't quite meet with the right ears. And but I kind of got on board initially as a volunteer, and from there I kind of took it from there. But the first year I was just supposed to do it in 1 year, but the it was completely rained out on the big kind of, you know, the Carnival Monday. It was just completely rained out. My main subject didn't even turn up until it got dark, so I had to kind of re-go again the following year. But yeah.
Got it. Well, that's how Trinidad culture is, as you also know, Chris. It just clutches you, and the next thing you know, you're spending years of your life making a documentary about us, because the culture is addictive, right?
Yeah, and everybody's so welcoming and generous with their time as well.
It's fantastic. So, in your documentary, Chris, Sweet Tassa, we learned that two of the most frequent places where Tassa music is used are at funerals and weddings. Which did you get introduced to Tassa music at? Was it at a funeral or a wedding, or neither?
Our two most important contexts are Hindu weddings, and then Hosei, which is, of course, a commemoration of the martyrdom of Imam Hussein and Hassan, right, his brother Hassan, the grandsons of the Prophet Muhammad. So in those two contexts, Tassa is very, very important. For me, I got really interested in Tassa for weddings. First of all, it's easier to access because weddings happen all the time, right? Year round. The first wedding that I went to was in 2007. Actually, I went, as I told you before, I lived in Florida, so I went to some West Indian weddings in Florida as well, and especially some Trinidadian Hindu weddings there as well. So that the first weddings I actually went to were in Florida and not in Trinidad. So I got really hooked on the wedding Tassa because the formality of the event was really interesting for me. Tassa is very important, you know, for the 3 nights of a Hindu wedding on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, especially for Friday night, which is the Matagor ceremony. I didn't specifically feature a discussion of Matagor in the film, but you do see some of it. There's some scenes of Matagor with the women dancing and the Tassa band playing to the side. And then on Sunday as well, there's the Lawa ceremony on Sunday morning. There's a good scene of that in the film as well, where the women again go off and dance once more and then come back. In that scene, actually, they're singing some Bhojpuri songs as well. So I wanted to try to include some of those songs too, even though today, of course, there's not a lot of singing with Tassa, but there was some singing with Tassa in the past. And then on the wedding proper on Sunday, Sunday afternoon, where there's, you know, 2 bands that clash with each other, right? So there's 2 Tassa bands that clash with each other. And for me, that was always a very exciting moment, as I've been doing my field work as an ethnomusicologist over the past 10 years or so. That was always very exciting for me, and it's always something that the drummers themselves talk about, right? So they know weeks ahead of time they've got a job for a wedding, and they say, oh, we're going to meet up this band, we're going to meet up this band, we're going to do this so that we can play better than them or something like that. And so that competition, that competitive side of it really got to me as well. So I got really interested in the wedding style of Tassa, and that's really what the focus of my research has been for a very long time. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
It does, it does. So death and weddings, and your introduction was more on the wedding side, and you're more interested in that side for sure, and you covered that side more.
Sure.
Yeah. Is that accurate? So,
Yeah,
okay. Absolutely. Sweet. So, okay. Back to Tony. I'm enjoying this ping pong. So let's see. I'm curious to know what surprised you most about the history of Carnival, because in the documentary, you have a lot of people who make sure to say that even if some of this generation might perceive the festival as just like a frivolous rave, is the language that you use in the documentary, it has a history that really is rooted in African liberation and in the expression of Caribbean culture, and it has all these global influences. So of the things that you learned from your research, what surprised you the most about Trinidad Carnival?
I think almost all of what you just mentioned, because even though you have almost 1 million people on the street, a lot of those people, even though they're of African Caribbean heritage, they actually probably are not fully aware of the history coming into it, and also the way that Notting Hill was founded. Again, a lot of people are not aware of its history. So that for me, when I first visited Carnival, before I did the documentary, it was mainly to do with sound systems, and it really was kind of just a party thing. So I think, for instance, a lot of my demographic will just have zero knowledge of what Carnival is truly about. So all of that was just really enlightening. Yeah.
Wow. Got it. Well, for me, it's always refreshing to see an outsider's perspective on Trinidad Carnival, and I love that you acknowledge that part of the festival, which we don't see it acknowledged enough. So thank you for that. I see we have some guests in the chat, so I just want to open it up so that I don't hog these documentary makers, because I have a million questions and I'll keep them talking forever. So if anybody has any questions that you would like to squeeze in, feel free to. And if not, I'll keep talking. Okay. Okay. So Chris and Sweet Tassa, one of my favorite parts of the documentary was when you uncovered that Tassa has really been a male-dominated activity for generations, and that recently Sweet Tassa, one of the founders of the group, I believe, he started introducing his daughters to Tassa music, and he found that, it was in their blood. They had the rhythm, they had the abilities, they had the skills, and now a lot more women are getting into Tassa playing, and they're parts of groups. How did you uncover this angle in terms of your research? Like, how did you uncover this angle?
Well, I should say that, of course, the title of the film, Sweet Tassa, plays on the name of the band, right? So Lenny Kumar, who's featured in the film throughout from start to finish, the name of his Tassa band is Trinidad and Tobago Sweet Tassa. So it's kind of a play on words, the title of the film comes from the name of his band, but it's also, it's also about the sweetness of Tassa in all its aspects. And so in the film, of course, I feature Lenny's family. So his father is a very important figure in one of the earlier scenes in the film. And then toward the middle, I guess, we bring in his daughters. So he has 2 daughters, and they've been playing with him for quite a while, right? So as he says in the film, as he was growing up, he thought it was, Tassa was just a male thing, that girls weren't supposed to even come touch the drum and be a part of the drum, be a part of playing the drum. And then he kind of realized at some point that, that doesn't make any sense. And he's got his own band right at home. And so he started teaching his daughters and brought in some other neighborhood young girls as well, and sort of trained them up. And so I think it's nice, right? So when I first started thinking about Tassa as something to study, 10, 15, 20 years ago, there weren't very many women a part of Tassa playing, Tassa culture. And of course, as you said, it's more and more women are becoming involved. I should say too that Lenny Kumar started an academy even during these COVID times. He's keeping the academy going online, so he teaches lessons online, and through that he goes to primary schools, other schools, and teaches boys and girls. And so today I think he's got a couple of younger bands, and women are very integral in those bands as well. So it's just another angle, it's another idea in terms of where Tassa is going, where it came from, and then where it's going. So I thought that was an important thing to feature in the film as well.
I agree. It was very important, and it was very nice to see these women talking about how some people don't want to see them there, or they like get pleasantly surprised and say, you know, you could hold that heavy Tassa drum like a little girl like you, woman, right? And that was really nice to see. For anybody interested in learning more about this band, the website is sweettassa.com, because as Chris mentioned, he covers a specific Tassa band that you can learn more about at sweettassa.com. Okay, so we also had the theme of women's freedom running all throughout your film, Tony Oldham. We heard women repeatedly saying that masquerading is such a freeing experience. That word free was used like over and over and over. And they talked about the pleasure of being able to dress up from the angle of, you know, the princess ideal of growing up and wanting to just be pretty and just dress up and have that fancy, like, you know, experience. And then they also talked about it from the angle of just embracing and loving their bodies and loving their lives and just having the freedom of just going on the street, enjoying themselves, regardless of what they look like, what their bank account looks like, what their, you know, life looks like, just enjoying the moment. Was that something that came up organically through your research?
It was actually, it's something I personally love about Carnival. It's I think it's something that English could kind of learn from, because we have such a regimented kind of society now with the rules, regulations, and so forth. And for me, that there was an opportunity there to kind of show what Carnival can give us back, really, and also the importance of the arts that they play in giving us that freedom of expression.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's fantastic. So both of you included pan. It was heavily featured in both of your documentaries, the steel drums, steel pan. We can go to you, Chris, first, and then Tony. Can you talk to me about your decision to include pan in your respective documentaries about Tassa and Carnival?
Sure. Well, for me, one of my earliest sort of academic interest in Tassa was the idea that some folks were pushing for Tassa to be a second national instrument, right? A national instrument alongside steel pan. The idea, of course, being that steel pan was representative of African Trinidadian culture, and therefore there should be something equal to that, right? So the Tassa being representative of Indian Trinidadian culture. It's not a very vocal debate, but it's a debate that comes up perennially. It's debated in the newspapers, at least. And my personal opinion is that it's probably not going to go anywhere in terms of making Tassa a national instrument. But the idea of that, I think, is interesting and important. And of course, there are figures in the film that discuss that idea. And so I wanted to bring that into this discussion too, that Tassa is a thing, but it also exists as just one instrument in a whole sort of pantheon of instruments and musical styles that come out of that mix of culture in Trinidad. And what's interesting for me academically and politically about all that is that, you know, I think music in Trinidad is always political, right? Even when it's just for fun, there's always some way of reading that from a political angle. And so just playing Tassa, it's not just beating Tassa, it's also sort of making a statement in some way. And so I wanted to have that counterpoint with steel pan and in there as well to make that story sort of come out. And I hope it did, right?
It definitely did. It created a nice dramatic tension from my point of view. it was sort of like we had an adversary, you know what I mean? Like we had we had a little bit of a competition going, a little rivalry with the two characters, Steel Pan and Tassa as characters, you know?
Well, it's interesting, right? When I screen the film for my students, or when I screen the film anywhere else, not amongst a Caribbean audience, especially not amongst a Trinidadian audience, it's completely lost on that audience, right? When I have this film, when I get feedback from people from Trinidad and Tobago, they completely understand what it is I'm trying to say, and I think that makes me feel good that I've done something that is useful there.
We're your audience. We are your audience. The Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival is your audience for this film because we understand exactly what you're trying to say.
Thank you.
And what about you, Chris?
No,
I mean,
yes.
sorry, Tony.
I actually did two document. Well, originally it was a much longer film on Carnival. So the whole history of Notting Hill, it actually started with Steel Pan. It pretty much started with Steel Pan, which is more in the other documentary. But I personally, I didn't know much other than the history of it. And when I started kind of going along to the Carnival events, this was really the first time that I'd seen it, and it really just pulls you in. And it was the bands that I followed, which was Ebony, they're pretty much one of the best bands in London. And in fact, they go to Trinidad, I think, every year when you do the international pan. And I followed them in 2014, 15 and 16. And I just happened to have a small story arc with them not actually managing to win in 2014, and then they won in 15 and then 16. But it was, for me, the whole community angle of it was partly what I was trying to show as well, that there's just a huge kind of family vibe to their kind of mass camp or what have you, pan camp. But yeah,
that definitely shine through. So I think you can consider that that attempt successful.
Okay.
At least from this one audience member's perspective.
But the thing is, in my other film, I actually follow one of the very first guy that played Steel Pan at Notting Hill, but it didn't quite fit right with this film. So I did actually do a lot more of the history of it, but it didn't quite find its way in the same way that the sound systems was not in this film at all. But it's a very big part of Notting Hill.
So to wrap it up, I have one final question for you both about breaking the fourth wall. I know that you're documentary makers and that you were, looking at these cultural phenomenon and the people who participate in them as subjects. But I'm curious, like, how involved did you get in the culture? So, Tony, have you ever played mass? Have you ever experienced the freedom of being on the streets and whining on a Trini woman or man?
No, I basically I say it almost every year. I filmed at Carnival all the way up to. I promised myself in 2017 that I would play mass, but I didn't, and I would actually I would prefer to play dirty mass than pretty mass. I personally, which I think comes across in the documentary as well, I find that mass to me is kind of more the true spirit of Carnival. So I would love to do it.
Do it.
Absolutely. So yeah, but in terms of Caribbean culture, I'm fully embedded in Caribbean culture, and I'm doing a doctorate on Caribbean cinema. So yeah, it's
fantastic. Okay, well, the books are all cool, but no, you need to do some actual research in the streets with some mud and some powder and some soca music playing. Okay, can you promise us that you'll do that?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, great. And Chris, have you tried to play a Tassa drum? Have you tried it all?
Yeah. So I played at a few weddings in Trinidad. I was
impressed.
I was very surprised that no one kicked me out. But I played the easy parts, and then when I play with Lenny, of course, he doesn't play too fast, and I can keep up. But yeah.
Were you a cutter? What drum did you play?
Oh, I usually play jaw.
Okay.
Because you can play anything on Jol as long as you keep the tempo, you're good.
Mm-hmm. And you were able to keep the tempo?
Oh,
Okay, good. The only reason I ask is because sometimes I struggle, so you know, have to ask. That is fantastic. So it is now 6:55. I've been told that we only have a half hour for this Q&A. So let me check. I see something in the chats here. I just want to make sure that I give people an opportunity to ask questions if they have any. One more time to open up to the floor if anybody has any questions before we wrap it up. Okay, well, since we don't have any questions, I'm just gonna let you guys go with one final question, which is what's next for you? What's coming up next in terms of your filmmaking life?
Go first, Chris. Or
well, this is my first feature-length film, so I feature-length. It's 58 minutes, so it's under an hour. I certainly hope I can do more film in the future.
Yeah.
My real job, I teach at a small college here outside Washington, D.C., so that kind of gets in the way. But I very much love filmmaking and doing this kind of research. On the academic side, I've got an edited volume of articles on Indian Caribbean performing arts
Nice.
that are coming out in the journal. What's the journal called? The Middle Atlantic Review of Latin American Studies. That should be out in December, featuring articles about Indian, Trinidadian, or Indian Caribbean music and film and visual art. So that'll be a really nice set of articles. And a bigger project for me too is looking at Tassa drumming in a more global context. So I'm putting together a research project now to go to Mauritius. And also to Suriname and in Durban in South Africa, comparing and contrasting the ways that Tassa drumming in those places, the former sites of indentureship, have developed over time and the ways that they use that Tassa.
That sounds incredibly fascinating and like something that I would definitely want to dance to. It's like a festival that's gonna like hop across the globe, all across the Indian diaspora, which sounds really fun. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of that. And Tony.
Yeah, I'm wanting to do a documentary in Guyana. It's actually to do with the importance of film and how it influences people. I can't say too much about it because it's kind of in development. But yeah, that's my next film project. And similarly, I'm also doing some study on Caribbean cinema, concentrating on the English-speaking Caribbean, which I've initially focused on Trinidad and Guyana. So yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you for giving us a little sneak peek into what's coming with Guyana, even though you couldn't tell us too much. We feel like we're privileged to be on the inside and to have gotten the scoop. So thank you very much, Tony and Chris, for your time and for making these fantastic portraits of two aspects of Trinidad culture, which I know that all of us love, and it's wonderful to see other people appreciating the aspects of our culture as well. Tassa and Trinidad and Tobago Carnival in Europe. Definitely check out the films, guys. If you haven't seen them, they're gonna be available all day. So you have 24 hours to watch these films, and I totally recommend them. As I was telling the guys before we started the Q&A, I'm not even a documentary fan, and they helped me. I watched them from start to finish, and I loved every second of the documentaries. So please check it out and have a great time at the film festival, even though it's virtual this year.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.